It takes a village to build a startup.
Good day, everyone, and thank you for having us, and welcome to It Takes a Village. My name is Tim Harvey. I'm the CEO and founder of Owl Peak Technologies, where we utilize miniaturized thermal sensors to detect early-stage colorectal cancer. Building a company is challenging, and in our space, it's, I would argue, one of the most challenging spaces to build a company. And to do that, it takes a variety of resources, talent, people, intellect, experience, and so on. And with that, I'm lucky to have an esteemed panel next to me, and I'm going to go through and we'll do some introductions in a minute. And thanks for joining us. And again, thank you to Giovanni and Dylan for throwing quite the conference. So we'll dive right in. Really quick, and I think a great place to start for everyone is maybe a quick introduction. We can go down the line. And I'd love to hear some of the motivation behind your company, but also a little bit about what you do and how this ecosystem starts to fit together.
Great, thanks, Tim. So I'm Marty Gomez. I don't think that's my picture behind me, but that's all right. We'll figure that out later. So I just saw it there, but no worries. So I'm a partner at Goodwin Procter. We're a global law firm, and I head our MedTech practice. So I'm 100% focused on MedTech companies. And I think we'll talk about this a little bit later, but we really, start with companies from the earliest days and represent them in, I don't do all of it, but sort of all of their kind of outside legal needs from day one as very small. We help companies get formed all the way through their exit, either a sale to a big strategic, or we even take MedTech companies public. The scope of the services that we offer is wide and varied, but it's really built around the things that MedTech companies need. So that's company formation, usually out-licensing of IP from some sort of an academic institution, protection of IP, and then entering into strategic contracts and relationships, as well as negotiations with investors. Because even though a lot of this conference has been about, as there should be, a very friendly relationship between investors and companies, you do want to make sure as a company that you're protected, as well as the investors are protected in the relationships that you enter into when you secure investment. So that's a little bit about what we do, and I'll pass it to the next panelist.
Heather.
Hi, I'm Heather Hansen, and I'm the president of Biomed SA. My background is in medical device development. From an engineering perspective, management, startups, seen all of it. But 3 years ago, I took on the leadership of Biomed SA, which is a nonprofit dedicated to the growth of the healthcare and bioscience sector in San Antonio, Texas. San Antonio is the 7th largest city in the U.S., and the biomedical sector is the largest economic sector. So we're looking for continued growth, building on a great foundation of accessible research. We have the largest military health complex in the U.S., so there's a lot to build from. My organization, as a nonprofit, we help companies grow that are in the region. We help bring companies to the region, connecting people to the resources that they need to grow their companies and do what they need to do. We look at trends that companies are facing, and we try to find solutions for those. One of those solutions is an event called BioFest Invest, which is a startup event dedicated to the biomed industry. That's in April every year. But all sorts of different programming opportunities that we do, including one with Lifeblood Capital, one of the sponsors of this event, which is helping companies determine their business milestones, get access to the military health market, look at their investor relations and their pitches, as well as free SBIR writing. So that particular program, Bridge to Bio, is actually free for startups in the region. So a lot of activities going on in San Antonio with Biomed SA, and I'm sure we'll get into more of those.
I'm Joseph Snyder with Lifeblood Capital. We're an end-to-end full-scale recruitment firm. And on top of that, we also invest in companies and help companies raise capital or find capital. And then we have now more recently partnered with MedTech World and Dylan Attard to help throw some conferences like the one you're at today. We focus only on MedTech. So that's anything from As far as digital, as far as software as a medical device, or on the pharmaceutical side, we'll go over to combination products, but everything else between its regulated hardware and or software, medical technologies. And that's our sweet spot. With startups, we'll go until a company gets around a Series C funding, and then we usually exit out to stay with the young guys.
Good morning, Cristiano Fontana. I'm CEO and founder of Free Bridges. We are a consulting company, business advisor. We do 100% focus on MedTech, early stage. We help companies with their strategy. Everything is around fundraising, so getting prepared, understanding the strategy, reach out, negotiation, and closing. And then we do commercialization and early commercialization, go-to-market, market access, all is what related to that. My background is more on the, let's say, I've been in commercialization of medical devices for 20 years now, and I also have a kind of corporate finance background. So we combine these in our services. We do pre-money evaluation, M&A services, and valuation, all focused on MedTech.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alex Condon. I'm the COO and co-founder of Galen Data. We're a medical device cloud data management platform. And essentially what that means is we help medical device companies, both physical and software as a medical device, aggregate their data. Once the data is aggregated, we have kind of a dashboard builder so that they can kind of drag and drop to create views for the clinician, for the patient, whoever their stakeholders might be. We help them kind of run their algorithms in the cloud, create notifications, reports, push the data to the EHR, and we do all the compliance to security around that IT infrastructure. And we spun out of a larger medical device software company after seeing this need of companies that wanted to basically have cloud-connected devices but didn't necessarily want to become an IT company and take on all that operational risk, the cybersecurity, the changing regulatory and privacy concerns. So we decided to kind of build a platform that would allow them to kind of focus on their core competency and leave the back-end heavy lifting to us as a third party.
Thank you, Alex. So one of the things we have in our office, we have a big sign that says, hardware is hard, get a helmet. Building any type of company, I would argue, is incredibly challenging, and I know each of you are founders, have founded companies, you participate in this ecosystem building, which is so critical to both the regional and global development of medical devices. So I think one of the things I'm curious about is some of your motivation behind why you do what you do, and maybe what part of the ecosystem you feel as though is the most important. I mean, you're focused on IP and all of the legal ramifications that companies deal with, but maybe speak to some of the motivations. We can start with you, Alex. We'll come back this way. And speak to that a little bit.
Sure, no, happy to. So when we were building these custom clouds for people in the previous life, those tend to be very expensive. They take a lot of time, and then there's this operational burden that comes along with it. And companies were coming to us at an earlier stage, basically saying, I need that infrastructure. I don't want to pay the cost. I don't want to manage all of it thereafter. So what do I do? And at the time, there wasn't a real good answer for them. It was kind of the only path forward. Pay for this expensive stuff and then manage it. So that's kind of how everything got up and running, seeing this kind of persistent need and knowing that this would kind of only grow through time. If you look at kind of the commercial space, or you have a lot of different connected devices out there, everything from cameras to coffee pots these days, companies build and then they outsource to a third party. So we said, well, why can't we do that for medical device? So got all the right certifications, we're ISO 13485 certified, we're high trust certified, and trying to be that kind of best platform for that audience.
Yeah, I think that dealing with early stage MedTech is, as a service provider, you're dealing with companies that don't have enough resources for dealing with all the things that they should care, right? And that's tough for the company. And as a service provider, what we try to do is just fill in those gaps. And as a business advisor, we just really have the privilege of somehow get involved in all the struggle that all those companies are going through, and so that we bring back that kind of expertise to those companies, right? So we try to have them and build a relationship with our client that they just try to get focused on what they really do, and we take care of something that they cannot, just because they don't have enough time. So in our case could be understanding really the market potential, or understanding which are the proper projection financially speaking, or okay, what kind of round I should build, what kind of strategy for my fundraising. So that's something that is very valuable for our clients, and this is how we try to structure our relationship with them.
And that's one of the things that jumps out at me, which is the level of trust and the relationship that has to be constructed around both, whether it's service providers, relationships within the industry and beyond, whether it's financing and so on, because there are never enough hands. I would argue that there are very few times when I've looked around and said, oh, we're fully staffed up, we're ready to go here. In addition, whenever someone asks me, oh, when do we need this? Yesterday, but today is just fine. So I think building that relationship and that level of trust with anyone who is essentially an extension of your team, and you have to rely on them and trust them to execute. So Joe, do you have anything to?
We got into the MedTech startup scene years ago and focusing exclusively within the recruitment side. And we liked that side of things because we get to nurture and foster talent. We get to build global relationships. You get to make friends within the industry at all the different conferences we go to. And on the other side, you're filling the gaps on the startup. So you have it feels like you're a part of it, trying to help them build their companies, figure out what their pain points are, and helping them fill that talent need that they can't find themselves when they've exhausted their own network. On top of that, we got in the investment side because a few years ago, we'd have these companies keep coming to us saying, we'd love to use your services. We need to hire these people, but we can't afford them. So to fill in the gap there, we started thinking, why don't we start introducing these startups to our investor network, started building an investor network, and then we saw the funnel start coming in where companies would get the capital they need where they didn't have that network themselves already. And on top of that, we'd get to help them fill their pain points then once they get the money they need. So we got to see a full cycle keep coming through just from getting capital, building the talent, and building those relationships over time.
Heather?
Yeah, so I'll answer that question from my perspective, working in medical device for so long. I got into it because I wanted to help people with improved clinical care. Having done that for a while, running this nonprofit that helps companies, now I'm helping people who are creating things that are going to, help clinical care. So I really like the helping people aspect of it. I get a lot of personal joy out of doing that. But also the environment I work in. San Antonio is very unusual in that the environment in the business realm, particularly in the biomedical space, is very, very collaborative. And it is not unusual to see competitors work together for something for the common good. And so being able to facilitate those kind of initiatives and activities as the independent party in the room is just really fun to watch, how companies that compete in the business world will come together and help each other for the common good is also really fun to be a part of.
I would argue that ecosystem development, especially regionally, is one of the biggest motivators, or it's a massive contributor to the acceleration of development. I think we've seen that in our area, in Charlottesville, Virginia, and beyond, and it's a critical part of that early stage, all those questions, the late nights, the hair pulling, and so on. Martin?
Yeah, sure. So, first of all, if anyone had questions about the tech savvy of the team at this conference, which has been out of this world, they have literally changed the picture on the screen on the fly here while we've been doing this panel. So whoever did that, awesome. I think the other guy was more handsome than me, but we'll stick with it. I think that, in terms of sort of motivations for being in the industry and sort of how we build relationships and all of that, I do think that particularly at the early stage, you should really view your service providers as an extension of your team. And as a result, you should demand that they sort of have the same passion and interest in the industry as you do, right? I mean, you're working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on building this company, and you want your service providers to have a real sort of personal connection to the industry. So, I can say personally, I'm a lawyer, right? So early in my career, I worked in some other industries. I did some real estate law for a while, and I wasn't nearly as passionate about the space as feeling like I was helping a company actually make a difference in patients' lives. And so, just selfishly, that motivates me to do a much better job for my clients, because I know, if I go that extra mile, if I work that extra hour, if I work that extra weekend, the result is maybe not somebody buying a new building, but launching some world-saving, health-saving device. So I think that's a big motivation for me personally in as being a service provider. choosing an industry that really motivates me, as I know that it motivates my clients.
Couldn't agree more. I think that's one of the driving forces behind why we do what we do, and I think that extends to this entire conference, I would argue. I think that the next topic I want to dive into a little bit is, the company development life cycle is quite long, and not only different phases, different risk points, milestones for individual companies. We're talking about commercialization, fundraising, fortifying your intellectual property portfolio, getting companies off the ground, and sourcing talent. Where do you see each of your services kind of fitting into that ecosystem, and maybe speak to some of your desired point of interaction with a company? And we talked about the key of building relationships and how important that is, and maybe when should founders or CEOs start to look towards you for guidance, advice, and some of that nature? Anyone can grab it. We don't have to be as linear.
I'll kick it off. In our case, you just described, how complex that puzzle is, and there are all these different pieces. So in our case, the first thing is helping, the companies putting all those pieces together, because as a business advisor, and we're really helping, fill in the gaps in any of those pieces. And so there's no, the right time for us is every time, because from the beginning to actually we do M&A, so we all the way through. And again, sharing the struggle of understanding all these different pieces, and also, with founders, CEOs, or all the C-level of the companies, how, difficult is going through, managing IP, managing, your organization growing, or the cloud. We then actually connect with all, the guys here in the panel, because we need them in order to also provide our services to the company. So for us, as business advisor, really, there's no, the right time is like every time is good.
Yeah. And I would jump on that too. You can't get in too early with how early you have to start establishing these relationships, because a lot of new founders don't know what they don't know yet. So the best way to find those answers is to start asking questions and reach out to different service providers. Good service providers aren't sitting there forcing their business down you. You mentioned the word advisor. That's what they do. They advise on, I think you should do this or that. Reach out to this person in our network, not just looking for money. We're looking to build the company and establish that long-term relationship. In the end, that will come back around and we can help the company and they'll use our services, but we have to get them there first.
Yeah, just on the the money point, you're right to bring it up, because it's a tension, right? Where a lot of people, I think early stage companies think that they can't engage with service providers because they haven't raised funds or they're not sort of in a position to be able to afford them. And I think the best service providers, understand that dynamic and sort of create their businesses in a way that facilitates that. So I can speak, from my law firm's perspective, we do want to get involved at the very earliest stages, because a lot of the things that get baked into your company, particularly from an IP perspective, but also even in like your formation documents, you live with that stuff, years and years down the road, and we would rather have that stuff done right at the early stages, so that it actually ends up being a lot more expensive sometimes to unwind a lot of that stuff years down the road. So, I think every service provider does it a little bit differently. I feel fortunate at my firm where, we take the long view, we take the relationship view. So in the early days, candidly, we don't make hardly any money off of early startup companies. That's why we're in the game for kind of the life cycle. And yeah, we make money on, later stage companies when it's more comfortable for them to be able to afford legal services. But in the early days, it's all about relationship building. And it's, as Joseph said, it's really not about the money at the beginning of the relationship.
From my perspective, it's really anybody who actually has a company. Maybe some even before that in certain cases, but it's important for companies of all life cycles to be involved in knowing each other. So we help companies that are early stage startups all the way to, the independent research nonprofit that's been around for 80 years. And we have 2 of those. What makes it important for everyone is those connections. So the large institution, they're getting fed connections as companies are growing up and needing their services. These smaller companies are getting to know where they want to do their research and their preclinical testing and all of that. But as a startup in particular, I think it's so important to work on your network before you need it. It is so much easier when you're in a crunch time and you need to, I need this testing now, to call somebody you already know than to be contacting, okay, these are the people that BioMedSA said I should call, now I'm going through the list and they're gonna get around to me. You really wanna have those relationships ahead of time so you can get your quotes faster, you can get your work turned faster, and already have those relationships in place.
So for us, we typically encounter companies very early in their life cycle because once they start thinking about software, it's probably too late. They probably already put their plan in their Series A deck that they've gone and they've shopped around to investors, and it's basically on them to execute on that plan. And they're kind of heads down. So we typically find them early, and then typically they work with us late in the game. So if baseball parlance, meet them in the first or second inning, and then we start working with them in the seventh. And in between that time, you live and die with those companies. You have to stay top of mind. You're talking to them all the time. And it's important for us to not only build trust, but also kind of shepherd them along so that they survive long enough to use us. The attrition in medical device is staggering for an industry that's built on bettering humans' lives. It's a very difficult path forward to commercialization for a lot of these companies, and a lot of good ideas die by the wayside. So we do everything we can, make connections, connect to service providers to get those companies to survive long enough where they can use us. And in that effort, you come across a lot of, we're on a panel of service providers, but there are some that are, in my eyes, kind of predatory. So we only work with service providers that I would say established MedTech founders have given the thumbs up to, and typically it's multiple thumbs up. And looking in this audience, I see some, Zoltan from Bishop & Co. is here, fantastic company. So I would say making sure that people don't go the wrong way on that journey to use us is very important to us, because with the amount of money that some service providers charge and the amount of time and effort it takes to work with some of them, one wrong turn can literally sink your ship. And in an industry that's as critical to humans' well-being as ours, we want to make sure that that never happens.
And I think that you made a good point too, because you don't want to just go with the name brand. There's the old cliche, you get what you pay for, but that's only valid if you're paying for expertise within your industry and your area. Just having the big name brand or the biggest, most expensive bill is not going to get you there. We're all here in MedTech. You need people who know MedTech. They have to know the industry, and they have to be able to refer you to other partners that can help you out too when they see that you could use a law firm or use your services or use cloud protection. You don't want to just be slinging them to other referral partners if they don't know the industry, the regulatory, and everything that comes with it.
I'm going to push Alex a little bit. So I'm the CEO of Alpeak Technologies. We're relatively early stage, a lot of work to do. And for the panel, how am I supposed to select service providers? I get plenty of emails daily about different things that I didn't know I needed.
I would say, reach into your network and find the people who've had success, ask them who they used, and then, trust but verify, right? So that's the way that I would go about it. I think that especially, we talked to a lot of companies in kind of the accelerator incubator space, and there tends to be a lot of service providers that kind of float around that might not have MedTech background. It's one of those things where there are companies that work with startups, and there are kind of MedTech specific companies that work with startups. And I think you always want to find the latter, right? That's the way that I would go about it. Trust the people who've been successful, and then connect with the people that they recommend.
Having been a consultant in the industry for many years, I've seen a lot of problems where they've come to me to fix it later and uncovered things. And one of the issues I've found is people go with the recommendations, which is the way you need to start. Don't just get out the proverbial Google phone book. But a recommendation isn't necessarily everything. To build on the verification side of things that Alex mentioned, you really need to see if the people are still there that whoever used that recommended them. I've seen many consulting firms, R&D, regulatory, quality, whatever, where they got a great review from these three people, but it turns out the only person there who really knew MedTech, well, they quit and they went somewhere else, and now they have great pictures to show and great experience to talk about, but you need to ask, is the person who did that actually still working here, and will they work on my project? Because it is, as firms are trying to build up, they often don't have all the expertise in-house, and you don't want the new person who doesn't know medical device to be working on your stuff. So that would be a big one as a way of verifying who you're using. And make sure that the personalities are going to match. Some service providers want to charge you for everything you ask for, but you really want a partner who's going to work with you on the way and not say, oh, well, that extra piece of paper is going to cost you $300 and then this one's $500. And you really want somebody who's just going to give you a reasonable price and work with you and not nickel and dime you every chance they get.
And I think it's almost like fundraising, where you have to build those relationships long-term, foster them early, and then you know who you'd like to work with. And Alex, I actually saw you in person yesterday. It goes back to the service providers trying to actually advise companies. Take us for a test run. We don't need the full-scale project. See how we work together, see if the personalities mesh. And if they don't, we'll be friends in the industry, but we just might not work together. Go reach out to these guys. They do the same thing. Or
this is the point, actually. I mean, you don't have to choose right away. You can start building a relationship, talking. Many times, clients come from word of mouth, but it's not like one-shot relationship. You can try to understand at least we are human beings. Like, you get along with these people, you understand their background, and service provider at the end will be part of your team. So you need to take your time deciding. I mean, you're not typically in a rush. Even if you're talking about connectivity, it's super important, and I fully agree with you. You need to get on these guys very early, because many times companies are don't thinking about that, and then it's too late. But you have time to select, right? So build your relationship even before signing a contract. That's not a problem. We just as far as I'm concerned, I'm not asking for a contract at a second call, right? I can have multiple calls and meetings, and after that, if something goes well, I'm probably the right choice.
I'll add real quick. One of the things that's very important, we're a core piece of companies' infrastructure. I want companies to like using us. I want to be able to answer their needs today and tomorrow. So we typically allow people to use us for free until they are 100% comfortable with the relationship that we're getting into, because we're going to be with them for the lifetime of their device. So super important. Sorry.
Yeah, and make us keep earning it too, right? Like, I mean, I know in my engagement letter, client can terminate the relationship anytime they want, right? So make the service provider earn it, and they should, extension of your team is the right way to think about it, just like you think about hiring, right? Like, yes, substantive skills, make sure that they have that, but usually when you hire somebody, there's more. Do they have the grit? Do they have a fit with you personally? Is there a trust there? I mean, I think trust is a big piece of it as well, and not only at the beginning of the relationship, but all the way through. And if that ever kind of drops, just like you would, with an employee, make the service providers keep earning it, day after day, year after year.
And I would just add that it's also a two-way street. So as a company using a service provider, you need to be respectful of that relationship from your side, which means you get a few last-minute requests, but if everything you ask is last minute, you're starting to devalue that relationship and how you're treating that other party. And so you really want to make sure that you're being just as respectful and appreciative of their time, and they'll give you loads of free time if you're respectful about how you receive it.
That's great advice. And thank you, Giovanni. And to carry that further, I would actually ask the question or pose the question, and I think a lot of executives, especially early on, and founders struggle with finding the question to ask. And I think the relationship aspect that each of you have spoken to today helps us formulate the question and know what we're looking for, know what to ask, help us identify both weak points or just gray areas we can't see.
Well, like in your case, right, Alpeak Technologies, your specialty is saving people's lives ahead of time that have cancer. Awesome startup company. And what I would say is, you can't be the expert in everything, right? Your expert is in that technology, right? It's up to, I think, the community, right, to educate on kind of what are those good due diligence questions to ask, right? How do you find the right fit for you? And I don't know if anyone wants to expand on that, but it's tricky not knowing, right? There are so many facets of this industry. You can't be an expert in diligencing all of them alone.
One of the benefits of a service provider that brings to the table is, whereas you're kind of living the life of your company very, very intensely for years at a time, we're living, multiple of those lives. We have clients at a lot of different phases in the life cycle, and hopefully we've been through what you're going through now, many, many times over and at many different times in the cycle. So, you say you got to figure out what the right questions to ask, but really your service provider should be informing you and sort of bringing their knowledge to the table too, and helping guide you as to, the things that you should be looking for based on our previous experiences, or frankly concurrent experiences with other clients, either at the same or different stages in the life cycle as you.
We've talked about building a network to select and know your service providers, but you also need a network with other CEOs and people who are doing similar things. We put together targeted networking, which is like speed networking, to help people develop the relationships with other people they should know, whether that's service providers knowing each other or CEOs of startups knowing each other. But those peers are the ones that can help you vet the questions, and you tell your story of what's going on, and those are the people that can say, you know what, I think you should really question that, because that's not how it happened when we were doing it. Or, even if it's a different technology, those kind of relationships can really help you in the decisions that you're making.
And you touched on asking the questions. I think that part's important too, because the best service providers are usually the ones asking the most questions to dig into your company, not the one giving you all the answers without all the variables. So having those relationships, digging in, having a nice long chat and seeing what they might need. They might think they need, from a recruitment standpoint, let's say they need one position, and then you dig in and find out where they are. And they find out they're way off base for what they really should be hiring at that timeline. So you don't know that without really working hand in hand with them and asking the questions.
There is actually a learning process on our side as well, at the beginning especially. I mean, that's the point. We actually start the relationship with a lot of questions, because we need to learn the specific needs. We need to know the specificity of that specific project. And after that, we can, bring that kind of networking as well. I mean, what we are basically doing is bringing to our clients that knowledge that comes from that kind of networking about all the other CEOs, all the other projects that we have dealt with. And this is what we do. So at the beginning, I 100% agree with you. If someone is giving you too many answers and straight, probably I would kind of refrain from using them. Yeah.
Run.
And do you feel as though, as your network continues to go, and Cristiano, maybe I target this this question for you, but especially with fundraising and some of that company creation in early stage, like, do you approach that in a similar manner from the relationship at the beginning? I mean, talk to me a little bit about funding or help. What do you see in some of the companies you work with, and what are you looking for in a partner or a potential?
Well, when it comes to fundraising, of course, fundraising is every early MedTech company is struggling with fundraising, and so the way we approach that, for example, people come to us saying, okay, can you just bring us the money? And we can't. The reality is that we can't. First of all, we are not the one that are bringing the money. Companies always the one selling themselves. What we can do is getting them prepared at the best possible in our opinion, understanding who are they pitching to, or who should they pitch into, and helping them in the process. What people don't understand, I mean, I've been a CEO and co-founded my own startup, and when I was approaching financial broker or those kind of people that are thinking, okay, these people are getting me my money and connecting with the right people, an investor, and then you realize it's not about the service provider, it's about you. And this is what we convey from the beginning. We always convey that we are not able to bring you money. What we can do is just getting you prepared at the best possible for doing that. So that's the kind of relationship that I would like also to set the level of expectation.
And Heather, I feel like you run into this a lot at the early stages, trying to figure out capitalization or understand needs, wants, milestones for companies. What's your kind of perspective on how you structure or even situate companies to be able to go raise money at some of those early stages?
Yeah, it's kind of a complicated question based on the experience of the founders. So founders that are, fresh graduates out of a university, I approach them quite a bit differently than somebody who's worked in industry for a while and then started their company. I find a lot of times some people need a lot of hand-holding, which as a nonprofit that's doing things for free, that's not really what my organization can do, but we connect them to the Small Business Development Center, and that's what they do. So sometimes the best help we give a company is by referring them to someone else who will give them, the services that they need. But a lot of the structuring of the milestones and the fundraising, I guess to give a general answer, it would be get the information that you need in order to have a good plan, which is why we have a program set up to do that, but then deliver on your milestones, because there are many investors, later stage investors, who attend all sorts of pitch competitions and networking events and things like that, and they're scouting around, and they have those conversations with CEOs, and they'd like to know them ahead of time, early stage, and then they'll ask them the next time, oh, I remember you were doing XYZ, did you finish that? And so if you're going to communicate milestones, you need to be as sure as you can that you can meet them, which is why when I've done hands-on operational management of companies, we have our public milestones and we have our internal ones. And you drive everybody to an earlier date so that if something happens, then you can at least meet your public date, because that's what everybody is going to judge your company on, and how successful they think you're going to be and how well you're de-risking in it.
It's like I needed that yesterday. Well, that's fantastic. So I want to leave a little bit of time, maybe a question or two, but right before that, maybe a suggestion or a piece of advice for whether it's executives, founders of companies, and so on, and maybe take some questions.
Yeah, sure. So simple advice, choose your service providers. We've got a lot of great ones up here, but there's a lot of others as well. I think we've all said it, but especially in the legal space, you need to have people with industry expertise. There's you do not want your, cousin's brother-in-law who writes wills, representing your MedTech startup.
I've seen some of those
Yeah,
disasters.
it's not pretty, so that's my advice.
Oh, wow. We've given so much advice, it's hard to narrow it down. Just to go on the networking piece a little bit more, there are a lot of people who will give you free advice, free services, whether you're a potential client for them later or not. And it's important to know what's motivating them to do that and what benefit you can give them out of it. If I take my organization, for example, we're outcomes driven. So when we give a referral or we connect somebody and they save time, which is money, or they save money directly, or they end up doing this contract and it was this dollar amount that was used as a business in San Antonio, it would be great if people will give us that information back, because we consolidate that, and then we're promoting out, hey, we just saved X amount of money, or pitch companies from BioFest Invest raised $2 million last year, whatever the number is. And you would be surprised how many people love to get the free help and won't answer the email of what they got out of it when you're trying to collect those outcomes. So that's what our needs are, but everybody up here and everybody who will, maybe not even a service provider that's giving you help, they could use something back, and you will get so much better help, and people will love you that much more if you look for how you can give back to those who are helping you.
And I would echo what Martin said first. You have to find the industry experts in your area first, and then start asking the questions. And one of the best way to find other service providers that you might be able to use is to ask your current service providers who they would recommend, because we're all in the industry together, and we're not afraid of sharing referrals when another company needs it.
Well, I may say something stupid, as usual you will say, but look at service provider not as an expense, but as an investment and as a value creation support. If you understand that someone is bringing value, don't look at the cost of it, but just look at the value that is bringing back. This will be my advice.
I'll say again, trust founders that have done it, right? Ask them who they used, ask them where they found efficiencies, but the key is ask. People are inherently helpful. They will do their best, like this idea of kind of it takes a village. I have no idea how many people, lost track, helped us along our journey that had zero to gain. So just always have the gumption to ask, and then trust people who have the pedigree to kind of guide you in the right direction.
Thank you for that, and that's why it's so important to build this ecosystem, continue building it, and it truly does take a village, and I know from our seat we thank all of you for your contribution on the panel today, but also the importance you play in the village. So thank you. If anyone has any questions, happy to take them. We are close to time, so.
I have a question.
Please.
So in the service providing world, we typically are looked at as a commodity. We have competitors. How do you guys differentiate yourself and make yourself special by rising to the top, especially if you have well-known competitors?
Who wants to grab that?
I'll start out because you won't be expecting it. So in economic development, there are regions that want everybody to move to their region and spend all of their money there. So there is competition, but I think the way you rise above that I found is by helping people because it's the right thing to do, because people can tell if you're just helping them because you want to get something out of it. And while it is very nice to get the data back and the thank yous and all that, having the right mindset of why you're helping people, I think differentiates the different organizations like ours in why San Antonio is a better place to land. So I'll throw that in.
I'll say, I think competition is healthy, right? Competition promotes innovation. We have competitors in the space, and what we try to do is just kind of be the best product that we can all the time, and we look at it as kind of like a healthy thing. One of the things that I always joke about, and this is kind of tangential, is I never want to live in a city that has one sushi bar. I want to live in a city that has two. So I would say that way there's competition. So I don't look at it as kind of a negative thing at all, right? Try to do the best we can. If we're not the best, then somebody else will kind of get you to where you need to go. And it's important, right, again, with all the money and all the risk and all of the burden that founders take on, just get your product to market. And hopefully we can be the helpful party. If not us, then pick somebody better than us.
I think it's also important to just always take the call when people reach out. There's a lot of anticipation that some people might not be relevant when they're reaching out, whether it's a client, a candidate, no matter who it is. You read titles, you read geography, but you can't make assumptions in this industry because you never know where business is going to come from. So get on the phone. That helps establish those relationships too, and it might be something that circles back down the road that you just never saw coming.
Yeah, it's the intangibles, right? So yeah, maybe you can find another law firm, another data provider, whatever. But as I've said before, make your service providers earn it. Responsiveness, treating you with the level of care and attention that your startup deserves. The best service providers will differentiate themselves, and they won't be commoditized.
Thank you. Well, it takes a village to save lives, and we thank each of you for your contribution, and thank you all very much.
Thanks again.
Thank you.